Hey everyone, it is Sillyman here. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a Gamepass shop in Roblox Studio. So I'm going to start by creating the shop button, that way the player can actually click it to open up the shop. So I'm going to go into Starter GUI and then insert a Screen GUI. And then inside of that, I'm going to insert a text button. Then I'm going to go ahead and center it this way. So change the anchor point to 0, 0.5. And then change the position. That way it's centered this way. And then I'm going to move it a little bit to the right. So I'm going to change this value of the position. I'll change that to 0.02. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and customize the button and add some color to it. So I'm going to change the background color to blue. Then make the text bigger because that way it'll be easier to see. So I'm going to turn on text scaled. I'm going to change the font. And I'll make the text color white. And then I'm also going to make it so that we have rounded borders, so that way it's not a square. So click on the button, insert object, and I'm going to insert a UI corner. Then I'm going to change the corner radius to 0.2, 0. And that way we have rounded borders. I'll actually change that to 0.25, so that way we can make it more round. And then I'm going to add a stroke to this, so click on the button, insert object, and then UI stroke. It's over here. And I want the stroke to be outside of the button, so change the apply stroke mode to border. And then I'm going to change the thickness to 3. And then change the text to shop. And there, now we have a button. I'm actually going to make it, I'm going to update the size. So right now we're using offset. I'm going to use scale, that way it stays a similar size on every device. So let's do 0.15 and then 0.06 maybe. Close enough. Okay, so now that we have the button, let's actually get into making the shop GUI. So I'm going to insert a frame inside of the screen GUI, then change the size. So by default, it's going to be using offset, but we want to use scale. That way it looks good on every device. So I'm going to change that to 0.6 for both the X and Y axis. And then I'm going to center it. So to do that, we change the anchor point to 0.5, 0.5, and then update the position to 0.5 as well. And that will center the GUI. And then similarly, I'm going to add UI corner. That way we have rounded borders. 0.20. So I think that's a little bit too round. So let's change that. So let's change that to 0.1. I think that looks good. I'll also add a UI stroke. I'll make that border, although I don't think it matters here because we don't have text on a frame. Change the thickness to 3. And then I'll change the color to blue so it matches with the button. And I'm just going to call this shop, and then I'll call the button shop button. Alright, so now let's insert the Gamepass buttons. So click on the shop, insert object, and I'm going to insert an image button. Alright, and we always want to use scale, so I'm going to change this to 0, the offset, and then let's just do 0.2 maybe, 0.25. So we do want this to be a square. So what I'm actually going to do is insert something called a UI aspect ratio constraint, and then change the aspect ratio to 1.5. Alright, and this will help maintain the aspect ratio on all devices. Then go back to the image button, and for the size, let's do 0.2 and then 0.3. Alright, so what the aspect ratio constraint does is it makes it so that on every device it's going to be a square, right? Because different devices have different aspect ratios, so it's going to make sure that the aspect ratio is the same on every device. Otherwise, we're going to have this button here be stretched on some devices, which we don't want. So that's why we have the UI aspect ratio constraint. So I'm going to just call this the name of our first Gamepass. So I'm going to just do speed coil. I'm going to move this a little bit to the right and down, do 0.05 and 0.05. And then inside of the button, I'm going to add a text label. And we can just say speed coil, right, to indicate what the Game Pass is. So I'm going to change the text color, get rid of the background. Let's move it down. So I'm going to change the size of it first. For the x-axis, I'm going to do 1 because we want it to take the full length. And then for y, we'll just do 0.4. Then I'm going to move it down all the way so that way it's underneath the image. Let's actually just do 0.25 maybe. All right, then I'm going to make the text bigger, so scale it, change the font, and I'll make it so that it has a stroke. There we go. And I'll add the images after, so I'm going to go ahead and make a button for each Game Pass. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And then I'll name this Gravity Coil. You can name it whatever your second Game Pass will be. And then I'm going to move it over. Let's do 0.35, 0.3. Okay. And then I'm going to change the text label to Gravity Coil. And then let's do one more. Let's just do a rainbow carpet, for example. Move this over to the right. And then change the text label. So now we want to get an image for all of these items. So to do that, I'm actually going to find these items in the catalog since all these Game Passes are catalog items. So I'm going to open up the speed coil and gravity coil. So one thing you could do is just right click this and then save image as, and then upload that image as a decal. And then you can just paste the image ID here. That's one way to do it. But there's also another way. So I'm actually going to go ahead and insert these items into Studio because we're going to be needing to do that anyway, since we need to give them the item when they buy the Game Pass, when the player buys the Game Pass. So to do that, I'm going to come into Studio and then type in the following command, which I will put in the description. And this will be used to insert an item into Studio from the catalog. So we need to replace the X's here with the asset ID. And to get the asset ID, we just copy the number here of the item in the catalog and paste it. This will insert it into Studio. As you can see, it's right here. I'm going to actually name this speed coil. Then let's do that with the other items. So I'm going to do that with the gravity coil. Copy this, paste it. Just going to add it. Let's also do that with the rainbow carpet. And there we go. I'm just call this rainbow carpet. Alright, so now that we have them inserted into the game, the way that I'm going to get the images is by actually clicking on the tool and then just copying the texture ID. I'm going to just copy the numbers only, although I don't think it really matters. And then I'm going to go to the to these buttons that we made and put inside of the shop GUI. So click on speed coil and then paste that for the image. And as you can see, the image is now there. I'm actually going to make the background transparent, so like that. And now I'm going to repeat that for the other ones. So copy the texture ID. Then paste it for the pass you want. I'm going to make the background transparent. So I'll do that for the rainbow carpet as well. Okay, so now it is time to do some scripting. So I'm going to go into server script service and insert a script. Right, make sure you insert a regular server script. Right, don't insert a module script or a local script, just a regular one. Then I'm going to use the following code here. So I will explain this code in a second, but first we're going to need to get the Game Pass ID of our Game Pass. Alright, so to get your Game Pass ID, you want to go over to your game and then go over to passes. Then as you can see, I've already created some of the passes I created for a previous video. But if you haven't created it yet, you just want to click on create a pass. That's going to ask to upload an image. So to get the image, of what I'm actually going to do is just go over to the catalog and then just copy this image. And then I'm just going to paste that inside of a photo editor. So I have paint.net, but you can use anything. You can use Photoshop or Microsoft Paint even. Then paste that. Then I'm going to save that. So choose a folder to save it in. I'm going to just call this rainbow carpet image. Save it. Then I'll go back and select that image. Alright, and then I'm just going to call it rainbow carpet since that's the name of the Game Pass. Description, we'll just say gives you a rainbow carpet in game. Then save it. And that's going to create the Game Pass. And the icon will load in a little bit. Just it needs to go through moderation. And then to get the Game Pass ID, so let's start with the speed coil. All we have to do is click on the three dots and then click copy asset ID. Let's go back into the script. I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. And then paste that with the speed coil pass ID variable. So paste it. Your number will be different from mine because every Game Pass ID is going to have a different ID. So now I'm going to go ahead and explain this code here. So first we have the Roblox Services Marketplace service, which is going to be used to prompt the player the Game Pass to buy it when they click on one of these buttons. And then we have the player service, which is just going to be used for the players. And then server storage, because that's where we have our tools. I'm actually going to go ahead and put this inside of a folder. So group is a folder, select all. To select all, you just click on one of them and then hold down shift and then click another one. That's going to select them all. So I'm going to call this folder gear. Alright, because that's what I have it here. So local gear equals serverstorage.gear. Gear is a folder inside of server storage. Then we have the pass ID, which we pasted. And this code here, I'm actually going to remove game because it's not needed. We have the players variable here. So players.player added. So this event will fire whenever the player joins the game, whenever a player joins the game. And then we have this pcall here. So what a pcall is, any code inside of it, it will prevent it from erroring. So what we can actually do is do if not success, right? So if the code here does error, then we can warn the message. So that's going to be error message. And then the code inside of that checks to see if the player owns the Game Pass with the speed coil pass ID. And if they do own the Game Pass, then we're going to make a copy of the speed coil inside of server storage. And then we're going to parent that to the player's hotbar here. So all of this code is for when the player joins the game. And then for this code is going to be for when the player buys the Game Pass through the shop. So we have this event called marketplace service.prompt Game Pass purchase finished. So that's going to fire whenever the player finishes purchasing through the shop. And then for the parameters, we have the player, the pass ID, and whether or not they purchased, because you can also cancel it. And if they did cancel it, then we're going to just not do anything. We're going to return. Otherwise, if they did actually buy Game Pass, we're going to check the pass ID of it. So here it's checking if the pass ID is equal to the speed coil pass ID. And if it is, we're going to give them the speed coil. Right now I only have code for the speed coil, so I'm going to show you how to add it for all the other Game Passes. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these lines of code and then paste it right under. Then I'm going to change this to gravity coil, as that's the second pass. And then I'm going to change these variables to gravity coil since that makes more sense. And then we need to change this here to gravity coil. That way we copy the gravity coil. Did I spell something wrong? Alright, and then we need to make the variable local gravity coil pass ID. Then we need to get the Game Pass ID. Let's copy that from here and then paste it. So this code here will make sure that the player gets a gravity coil if they own the pass when they join the game. And then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to do else if pass ID equals gravity coil pass ID. Then I'm going to copy this here. Instead of giving them the speed coil, we're going to give them the gravity coil. Alright, and let's also do that for the rainbow carpet. So local rainbow carpet pass ID. I'm going to get the pass ID of the rainbow carpet, paste it. Let's do the same for the rainbow carpet. Let's change this rainbow carpet. Alright, make sure you spell this one here with the capital R, since it needs to match what's inside of the gear folder in server storage. That looks good. Let's do the same down here. All right, so this is for when the player buys it through the shop. So we need to handle both cases. Change this to rainbow carpet. All right. So that's it for this script here. I'm going to actually go call this Gamepass script. But we aren't completely done because we still need to make it so that whenever the player clicks on one of these buttons, it's going to prompt them to buy the Game Pass. So you might think that this is what this is for, but what this code actually does is it's code that fires after the player presses buy on the prompt. But we still need to make it so that when you click on one of these buttons, it's going to actually prompt it. So to do that, we're going to use a local script, and I'm going to just put that inside of the shop. So insert object, and then we're going to insert a local script. So I'm going to do local shop equals script.parent, right? Because we put the script inside of the shop. So script.parent, the parent of the script is the shop. And before I do anything else, there needs to be a way so that we know the Game Pass IDs of all of these buttons for which ones they correspond to. So to do that, I'm actually going to use something called attributes. So I'm going to select all of these and then go down here and add an attribute. So click on the plus icon. I'm going to call this attribute pass ID, then change the type into a number, and then click on save. That's going to add an attribute for all of these buttons if you have all of them selected. Right, you could do it one by one, but it's just easier to have them all selected and then just add an attribute to all of them. And then now we need to paste the corresponding pass ID. So let's start with the speed coil. I'm going to just go back to the server script since we have them here and just copy the speed coil ID, paste it here. Right, and for this one, you're going to have to do it one by one. So let's do the gravity coil next. And the rainbow carpet. All right, let's go back to the client script. So now we need to make it so that whenever the player clicks on one of these buttons, it's going to prompt them to buy the Game Pass. So I'm actually going to put this inside of a folder. And I'm just going to call it passes. And the reason I'm putting it inside of a folder is that we can use a for loop. But if we do that with these items also where these are, it's actually going to cause some errors. So I'm going to do local passes equals shop dot passes. Since passes is inside of the shop. And then I'm going to do a for loop. So that's going to go through every one of these buttons. So for I, v in pairs, passes, get children. This will get all of the buttons. So the children inside of this folder is just the buttons. Do. And I'm going to say v dot activated. Right, so that's the reason why we're putting it inside of the folder. Because if we say v dot activated for these objects, well, these aren't actually buttons and they don't have an activated event. So that will actually cause an error. So we'll do v dot activated connect function. And so when they click on the button, we want the player to be prompted to buy the Game Pass. So I'm going to add marketplace service here, since that's what we need to prompt the pass. All right, then we'll do marketplace service prompt Game Pass purchase. Make sure you don't select the other ones. It should be prompt Game Pass because that's the type that we're prompting. And then I'm going to do game.players.localPlayer. This is the client, so it's just going to be our player. And then the pass ID. So that's going to be V. So V here is going to be the button. It's each one of these buttons. And then we need to get the attribute that we created. So we're going to do get attribute. And then the name of the attribute, which is pass ID. All right, so that should be it. Let's go ahead and test it. Oh, and one more thing. We have to make it so that when you click on this button here, it's going to actually open this. So let's actually make this not visible since we don't want it to be there by default. So let's do that. I'm going to make a variable for the button. So the button is over here. So I'm going to do local shop button equals shop. So here, this is talking about this here, the frame. So to get this, we do shop.parent and then .shop button. Right, because the parent of the shop is going to be the screen GUI and the shop button is in the screen GUI. So shop.parent.shop button. Then we'll do shop button dot activated connect function shop dot visible equals not shop dot visible, and this will toggle it. So if it's on, if the shop is visible, it will make it not visible, and if it's not visible, it will make it visible. So if I go ahead and hit play, if I click on the button, you can see that it works. Let's try clicking on one of these buttons. It's asking me to buy the speed coil, so let's buy it. And as you can see, it gives me it. And I also had the rainbow carpet by default because I just created the Gamepass, so I own it by default. So that means that the code for when the player joins the game also works since we had this from the start. As you can see, I can equip them and it increases my speed, the speed coil. And let's also do that with the gravity coil. If I buy it, you can see that it works. And one thing I do want to mention is that if you try buying a Game Pass that you already own, you're going to get this message saying you already own this item. And when you do create a pass, you do own the item, you do own the Game Pass by default. So if you want to be able to test the rainbow carpet, what we can do is stop the session, click on test, and then I'm going to start a local session. So I'm going to choose one player and then click on start here. And this is going to load up a session where I don't own any Game Passes. Alright, so we have some errors here, but I think this is just Roblox related errors, so it's not from our script, so we don't have to really worry about it. So click on the shop, and as you can see, we didn't have the rainbow carpet here. We did in the first time I hit play, but here we don't, since we don't own any Game Passes here. So click on the rainbow carpet. Oh yeah, we have to put this on sale. So to do that, we just click on the pass here in the passes section of our game. Go to sales and check this here. I'll just put it up for 1 Robux for now. And I think I have to reload it now because it's still going to say that it's not on sale. So I'm going to just restart that. Alright, so let's try now. Click on the rainbow carpet. I'm going to click buy. That should give it to me. There we go. And it works. So that is how you create a Game Pass shop in Roblox. So if you found this video helpful, please leave a like, and I will see you all in the next video.